Hey guys, I am sitting here with Jess Stanya with Youth in Transformation, and we're talking all things youth today. And I have a couple of questions I want to ask her because she is the expert, she's the guru here. And I want to start off talking about this season that we all have been in, which is COVID. It has impacted everybody, and I can imagine how it has impacted our youth. I know you guys are super engaged with youth and what they're doing. What are some of the challenges and difficulties that you've seen in this season?
Yeah, well, I think this pandemic is more than just a global health pandemic. It's become an epidemic of lack of education in many communities. Where what we're seeing is that a lot of young people, when the lockdown started, the next day they were online doing school, and but for the majority of South African young people, they found themselves with no access to education. And in terms 3 and 4 of last year, we saw that the school that we're working in, which is a sort of middle low income school, they were only able to give their grade 8s 15 days of in-person teaching.
Wow.
And that's in comparison to some kids that never missed a beat. They continued to finish their year of schooling and move on to the next phase. And I think in addition to that, you're also seeing so many of the mental health impacts in young people's lives when they're dealing with isolation, loneliness, lack of authentic relationships, lack of peer relationships. And so I think the pandemic has many rippling effects that we are seeing.
You mentioned something that it's not in my questions here, surprise, around mental health. I think that's very important aspect. I think that has challenged quite a few people. Talk to me a little bit more about that. How have you guys engaged with some of the mental health issues that have come out of being isolated? All the things that come along with COVID. How have you guys engaged with that?
We're currently actually working on a mental health workshop that we want to do with young people. But I think the main thing that we're seeing is that so many young people are sort of maybe perhaps unable to verbalize. This has been almost like a post-traumatic stress event.
Right.
Many young people have dealt with loss. Many young people have known someone in their families, their communities, their grandmothers, their aunt, uncle that have passed away due to COVID, and don't necessarily have access to spaces to process this. In addition to that, you've got, like you said, the fact that you've been isolated for so long. And if you're a young person living in a low-income community, isolation doesn't actually mean isolation. It could mean living in a one-bedroom house with 10 other people. And so the only opportunity during lockdown for you to be alone was to leave, was to leave your house, and which was obviously illegal at the time.
Right.
And so, I think what we actually need to do is create spaces for young people to process, to dialogue, to communicate, to say how they're feeling, to and give them some tools to be able to help process how they're feeling, and to not think that even if you haven't lost someone due to COVID, that you haven't been affected. I think every young person has been affected in some way, and it's a valid thing. And we need to validate that in our young people's lives, and we need to give them space to verbalize how they're feeling.
No, for sure. Even as you're talking, I'm thinking about myself and the family culture that I grew up in. It wasn't common to share your mental health challenges or issues. There wasn't a space that was created for that to do that. It was always just pick up, be tough, keep going, don't talk about those things. And then we find generations who've kind of had that same type of DNA. And we find people that they don't feel safe to be able to process. We are talking about some challenges and some difficult things. What are some positives that you've seen in the youth spectrum with our young people that has happened over this current season, this last season?
I think something that has been really positive, and it's maybe not specific to the COVID season, but something that I see in young people in this generation is that they're much more socially aware than previous generations. They're aware of injustice. They're aware of when things are not right in the world. They're much more sort of involved in the fact that, no, that's wrong and it should be made right. And I think that's something that's really critical as the church, that we actually engage that space, that we don't tell our young people to be quiet and step aside, but we actually hear them and give them a voice, give them a platform to express their views in positive and constructive ways, to actually even bring us closer to the line of justice and where we should be going and what we should be caring about, because Jesus cared about justice. The kingdom is about bringing justice to the world. And so it's something that's it should be on the heart of the church. And it should be something that we as the church and as stewards of the kingdom are passionate about.
Expound on that a little bit more for me. You said a word that made my heart jump, the church. What is the church's role specifically in regards to young people and youth in helping them navigate some of the things that you're talking about in journeying with them? What do you see the church's role in that?
I also love that word. I love the church. And I think the starting point is actually to take a step back. And what I always try to engage with pastors and church leaders is to say, let's look at this country. 51% of South Africa are under the age of 18. So if I'm a pastor in this country, I have to think that more than 50% of my harvest field are young people. And so if I'm not critically thinking how to reach, impact, and transform young people, I'm missing 50% of my harvest.
Wow.
I'm missing when Jesus said, lift up your eyes and look, the field is ripe for harvest, and I'm not looking at young people, I'm missing it. And so I think step one is to recognize that young people are an incredible, significant part of our harvest. And we need to, as the church, be passionate about them. You can't speak too much about reaching young people, about reaching children.
Right.
And then I think the second thing is, once you say, okay, no, we've got our eyes lifted and we're looking at that harvest, then the next thing is to say, okay, how can I be relevant to them? And that gets to be a little bit of a touchy issue sometimes. People are like, I don't want my church to change. I like the way we do things. But I think what I mean when I say relevant is, how can I love them? Because that's what Jesus did. He didn't have cool catchphrases and slogans. He showed up and he paid attention. And that's what we need to do as the church. We need to show up and we need to pay attention.
That's good. I want you to put your prophet hat on now.
Okay. Got it?
Talk to me about the future. What do you foresee? Where do we go from here? We're still in COVID, but the vaccine is slowly rolling out. What do you foresee happening in the future here?
I think if the church steps up and owns their place as a forerunner to the bringer of justice in society, because that's really what we're supposed to be. We are supposed to be the prophetic voice of justice in our communities. If we do that and we stand in that place and we're willing to be cutting edge, and I don't mean cutting edge with all the cool gadgets. I mean cutting edge by doing what Jesus did, going where people don't want to go, speaking to those that people don't want to speak to, being willing to be unacceptable, to accept people, to love people. And if we're willing to do that and walk on that knife edge of cutting into communities and being there for people, then I think that the kingdom follows. Righteousness follows, justice follows, prosperity follows. That when the kingdom comes, things fall into place, things become right again. And that's what we want. That's what we
Right.
want in this world. We want to see a world where poverty doesn't exist, where injustice doesn't exist, where racism doesn't exist. And we want to see we want to see that life that Jesus promised that we can have. And as we establish the kingdom in this nation, that's what we're going to get. And so that's what I see. I see the church rising up and taking its rightful place as the bringer of justice in society.
That's good. What last words would you have for us as we close out our time together?
I think I would like to say to every Christian that is sitting here to step up and to do your part, to not shrink back from the calling that God has for you, but also to not be afraid to reach out to the next generation. The Bible says that we must teach the next generation how they should walk and how they should go. That we must have His word painted on our doorposts and speak about it when we sit down at the table. And so many young people. I mean, the statistics say that it's over 60% of young people in South Africa are living in fatherless homes. And I think that the church has an opportunity to step up and to be fathers and mothers to the orphans in this country. And so I would call you to step up to bring the truth, bring love, and bring transformation to young people.
That's good. And then how can we get in touch? How can we stay in contact, keep up to date with what you guys are doing? How can we get involved? How can we assist?
Well, we have a website, youthandtransformation.org, that you can come to check out our projects, what we're doing. We're working specifically in education-based initiatives. We also have, we do mentorship with young people, and we have opportunities for people to volunteer, serve, and get involved. And so you can give us a call, you can contact us through the website, send us an email. But yeah, we'd love to have anyone that wants to get involved.
Okay. Thank you so much for taking some time and letting us ask you some questions. You did a wonderful job. And let's do this again. Have
Awesome.
a great time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.